Have some unfortunate, devastating legal breaking news for the rule of law. What is it? And who is delivering this legal breaking, unfortunate blow to the rule of law? This reporting by the Politico regarding Donald Trump's illegal appeal and he unfortunately succeeded. I don't know how. I'm wondering who the hell he threatened to or suck off. I wonder who he threatened to or suck off if they didn't do as he illegally appealed, even though he never really lost his appeals rights at all whatsoever, like he claims, to get them to illegally allow him to reinstate one of his targets in a way, regarding DEI and his illegal executive orders. What all does the reporting say in detail? Let's find out the actual full reason and break it down in today's video. Like I said, this political reporting is by Political, or this legal breaking reporting. The article is titled, Appeals Court Allows Trump to Reinstate 2 Executive Orders Targeting DEI. The 3-member appeals panel lifted a lower court's injunction that had put the policy on hold. By Josh Gerstein. And the article reads, a federal appeals court has given President Donald Trump's administration the go-ahead to enforce a pair of controversial executive orders illegally. My editorial edition. And the editor's note. That seek to root out diversity, equity, and inclusion effort at federal agencies and government contractors. The 3-member appeals panel including 2 judges appointed by Democratic presidents, lifted a lower court's injunction that had put the policy on hold last month. The ruling Friday from the panel of Richmond, Virginia-based 4th Circuit Court of Appeals is not a final decision on the legality. Keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. These guys are not a final decision on the legality. Which means that legally and unconstitutionally, this can still eventually be blocked. Rightfully and constitution lawfully, constitutionally lawfully by the Supreme Court of the United States. Because, let's face it, we were 1,000 times safer when DEI was involved and existed. But now it's not going to exist anymore as of right now because of this illegal, corrupt administration. Continuing with the article. Of Trump's anti-DEI policy, it merely allows the government to administer the policy while litigation continues in separate opinions, explaining their votes. The three judges suggested the Trump administration should be allowed to demonstrate that it will abide by anti-discrimination laws and demonstrate that it will abide by anti-discrimination laws and respect First Amendment rights as it implements the executive orders which Trump issued on his first 2 days of his new term. Okay, I have to fact check the judges right here, right now, constitutionally and legally. Unfortunately, even though I think they should, they're not going to obey anti-discrimination laws, nor are they going to respect the First Amendment rights of the American people and the Constitution. Because that is just how Donald Trump is. Let's just face it right here, right now, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, that is a known fact. That this corrupt you-know-what is known for doing, because Donald Trump does not like how the Constitution interprets the federal courts, and fact-checking him in his completely bogus, illegal, unconstitutional, unlawful abuses of power. Continuing with the article. One of the executive orders directing federal agencies to abolish all DEI programs within the federal government The other order requires recipients of federal grants and contracts to certify that they do not operate unlawful DEI programs, and it directs federal officials to, quote, encourage, quote, the private sector to end DEI. Note, ladies and gentlemen, that there is no unlawful means for DEI. We were much safer, and things operated much easier when DEI was in effect. But, like I said earlier, unfortunately, DEI is no longer going to be in effect, majority because of this corrupt, illegal, fascist administration. It's just a bunch of BS. And Donald Trump should have never been allowed to run. He admitted that he even had Elon rig the election of the 2024 presidential race. But yet, no one's willing to do anything about it because, unfortunately, he is illegally threatening to execute them unlawfully for no apparent goddamn reason. Continuing with the article. Quote, the challenged executive orders limited on their face are of distinctly limited scope, end quote. Pam Harris, the judge, wrote, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I accidentally backed out of the article. Let's get back into it. Who is an appointee of President Joe Biden. Quote, the executive orders do not purport to establish the illegality of all efforts to advance diversity, equity, or inclusion, and they should not be so understood. Harris said the provision requiring certifications from federal contractors and grantees only require pledges not to violate existing federal anti-discrimination law. But yet, ladies and gentlemen, this administration is illegally, unconstitutionally, and unlawfully violating every single gosh darn federal law that there is. Even though Donald Trump claims that he is federal law because he's president. If you're federal law, then maybe you should be following federal law. You piece of crap. Continuing with the article. And she said the presidential orders don't appear to present a direct threat to the First Amendment rights because they, quote, do not authorize the termination of grants based on a grantee's speech or activities outside the scope of the funded activities, end quote. But yet this POS is constantly violating the American people's First Amendment rights. That's how we know that you're lying and you're so full of it. Continuing with the article. But Harris offered a caveat that the orders could violate the Constitution if federal officials enforce them too vigorously. Quote, agency enforcement actions that go beyond the orders, quote, narrow scope may well raise serious First Amendment and due process concerns, end quote. The judge added. Chief Justice Albert Diaz, an appointee of President Barack Obama, said he agreed with Harris's analysis of why a block on the president's order was premature. He, too, warned that aggressive implementation might violate free speech or other rights. Again, but it's okay for Donald Trump, even though he claims that he himself is the federal law because he is the President of the United States illegally, my editorial's note, can violate numerous laws and get away with it? Certainly he cannot. Continuing with the article. I too reserve judgment on how the administration enforces these executive orders, end quote. Diaz wrote, quote, it's unclear what types of programs or formal or informal the administration seeks to eliminate, end quote. He continued, noting that certain steps agencies might take could create concerns about whether the orders are so vague that people don't know how to comply with them. But Diaz mounted a robust defense of pro-diversity efforts, arguing they are valuable and typically well-intentioned. Quote, despite continuing now with the article on the same paragraph. Despite the vitriol now being heaped on DEI, people of good faith who work to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion deserve praise, not opprobrium, end quote, the judge wrote. Quote, when this country embraces true diversity, it acknowledges and respects the social identity of its people. When it fosters true diversity equity, it opens opportunities and ensures a level playing field for all. And when its policies are truly inclusive, it creates an environment and culture where everyone is respected and valued. What could be more American than that? End quote. Diaz also warned against some anti-DEI efforts that seem intent on erasing the sins in America's history. Quote, a country does itself no favors by scrubbing the shameful moments of its past, end quote, he wrote. The sole Trump appointee on the panel, Judge Ellison Rushing, pushed back at her colleagues' defenses of DEI, bluntly asserting that they were stepping outside the proper role for judges. Quote, any individual judge's view on whether certain executive action is good policy is not only irrelevant to fulfilling our duty to adjudicate cases and controversies according to the law, it is an impermissible consideration, end quote, Rushing wrote. Quote, a judge's opinion that DEI programs, quote, deserve praise, not opprobrium, quote, should play absolutely no part in deciding this case, end quote. In a ruling last month, U.S. District Judge Adam Abelson halted key provisions of the Trump administration's orders, my editorial edition, saying they were likely to result in, quote, arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement, end quote. Abelson, who is a Baltimore-based appointee of President Joe Biden, said the policies could be expected to chill the speech of government contractors who want to pursue diversity goals but fear running afoul of Trump's edicts. The suit that led to Abelson's injunction was filed by the legal group Democracy Forward on behalf of the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, the American Association of University Professors, Restaurant Opportunities Centers United, and the City of Baltimore.